Welcome back, flower fans. I'm Claire and the City, and today we're off to the iconic RHS Chelsea Flower Show, probably the most famous flower show in the world. It takes place for 1 week every May, and this was my second visit. Anything involving flowers is right up my street. I'm here with my mum on Members Day, which is a 3:30 p.m. ticket and slightly questionable weather. Very British indeed. If you've never been before, you might be wondering what Chelsea Flower Show is actually like. How much does it cost? What to wear? Is a half-day ticket enough? And what's the difference between a show garden and an artisan garden anyway? Will they know that the only flower I've successfully kept alive is a flaming Katie from Waitrose? These are the important questions, and if you haven't been before, the vibe is very much like The Crown meets Rivals. There's a lot of posh people, which isn't surprising because you're in Chelsea, darling. The land of the Sloane pony, the King's Road, designer boutiques and beautiful townhouses, and just a hop, skip and a jump from Buckingham Palace. Fun fact, I once spotted Kate Middleton and her mum having lunch in an Eat Cafe on the King's Road just days before her engagement to Prince William. Sadly, my royal spotting skills were less successful at Chelsea Flower Show. But anyway, I'll show you what Chelsea Flower Show is really like as a paying visitor. We'll cover tickets, what to wear, the best thing to see, the famous show gardens, the Great Pavilion, food, shopping, whether it's worth the money, and the free flower festival happening alongside it, Chelsea in Bloom. As always, I'm looking for creativity, colour, and a strong theme or design. So let's go and find out if Chelsea Flower Show is a bed of roses. Come with. Chelsea Flower Show takes place in the grounds of Royal Hospital Chelsea, so the best station to come into is Sloane Square Tube on the Circle and District line. From there, it's about 10 to 15 minutes to reach the grounds. Although it's insanely busy, the staff are fantastic at getting you there safely and swiftly and out of the station. At the same time, Chelsea in Bloom transforms the surrounding areas into a giant floral festival in partnership with the RHS. Shops and retailers go all out with floral displays, and every year the theme changes. If you've watched my Chelsea and Bloom video, you'll know I absolutely love it. It's free, colourful and accessible to everyone. Chelsea Flower Show feels more curated and exclusive. Chelsea and Bloom feels like a giant floral street party, and I genuinely enjoy both for different reasons. I'll link a card here if you want to find out more about Chelsea and Bloom and the nearby Belgravia in Bloom. Later in this video, I'll go over some of the places you can eat in the area outside Chelsea Flower Show. Tickets. You've probably heard of RHS Chelsea Flower Show before you even stepped inside the pavilion in a pair of white linen trousers and a trilby hat with an optional backpack. Chelsea Flower Show tickets go on sale in the autumn the year before the event. They're very popular and usually sell out, so get in quickly. The first day, Monday, is the VIP and press day where all the celebrities and royals go. Imagine having a chat about growing a vegetable patch with King Charles, but alas, not this year. Tuesday and Wednesday are for RHS members, and the final 3 days are open to both members and the public. Yearly membership to the RHS costs around £60, and tickets on top range for over £100 for a full day ticket, so it definitely isn't cheap. And I'll just remind you that there are so many lovely free parks in London if that's over your budget. We opted for a 3:30 p.m. entry, so we had around 4.5 hours before it closed. You definitely feel more like you're on the clock, making sure you see everything. So if you'd like more leisurely time, make sure to book a full day ticket. We had a digital ticket on the app, and a brief bag search later, we were in the venue super quickly. What to wear. In 2026, in May, London experienced the most crazy swing in temperatures from around 15 degrees early in the week to almost 30 degrees by the end of the week. Why are we like this? British spring means you pack your umbrella, sun cream, raincoat and sunglasses. The best advice I can give you is to have layers in mind, maybe even 2 outfit options for different weather, and keep your eye on the weather reports. You know me, I'd like to be skipping around in a floral dress, but on this occasion it was a drizzly, cool day in London, so me and my mum ended up in jeans, jumpers and long coats, which is wild because a few days later you wouldn't even need a coat. I have seen plenty of people with umbrellas, light raincoats and also using backpacks, and mercifully if it does rain you can go to the Great Pavilion and spend time inside. Also, feel free to wear pretty shoes and heels, but make sure you can walk in them as there's plenty of ground to cover. Flats are a great choice for all of the walking around, and it gets busy, so closed-toed shoes are really good in case you're worried about anyone stepping on your feet. And despite the glamorous reputation, most visitors are dressed surprisingly casually, so don't feel pressured to look like you've stepped out of a magazine. I would still like to go back in a nice dress and fancy shoes though one day. Finally, pack a charger because you know you'll want to take loads of notes and take photos too. What to see first at Chelsea Flower Show? First of all, I really recommend research. Have a look before you go what might be your favourites. With all the crowds, it's really easy to miss something. Try the BBC and the RHS coverage and make a note of anything that stands out. Also recommend looking at Instagram too. One of the first things we did was ask one of the volunteers for advice when we got in there, because Chelsea Flower Show can feel so overwhelming when you first arrive. And their suggestion was to explore the smaller gardens first and then head into the Great Pavilion and leave the large show gardens until later when the crowds had eased. This worked perfectly for us. I took a picture of the map and skipped the £18 guidebook. One thing to note is that the BBC are filming constantly throughout the day, and we were super lucky to spot a couple of presenters as we walked around. The balcony and container gardens have lots of innovative and creative ideas for small spaces you can take inspiration from. And around the corner, the houseplant studios have a sensory experience packed with ideas. I enjoyed how small and perfectly formed these were, and lots of bright moments, adding lots of highlights against the sea of green. I really liked all of the smaller gardens, partly because they're realistic. Most of us aren't redesigning a country estate, but we might be looking for ideas for a balcony, a patio, or a small garden. These spaces were packed with inspiration and colour combinations and planting ideas and creative layouts. One standout for me was the Bat Conservation Trust garden, which managed to feel magical, unusual, and full of interesting plants. I think this section could be one that I would like to go back to, but as we were so time restricted, I didn't actually get a chance to go back here, and we spent more time in the Great Pavilion, which is where we're going next. The Great Pavilion. Don't tell anyone, but this is actually my favourite part. There's something about being in this great environment with all of these premium flowers and all the work that's gone into these that just makes me so happy. Whatever flower you're into, you're going to be able to find an extraordinary example of it in here. It is absolutely enormous. We even got a bit lost in there at one point, so I recommend going around the edge of it and then tackling the middle afterwards, just to try and make sure you don't miss anything. It is honestly such a joy to be up close and personal with the gardens and to ask questions from the growers as well. We got some great advice. And because it's indoors, thank God, you don't need to worry about rain or wind, which is such a welcome relief. The displays are so elaborate, you might feel a bit overwhelmed by how many stands there are to see. If you have an all-day ticket, take your time. But if it's a half-day ticket, keep note of what you want to come back to and make sure you get around the whole show first. I went straight to see the roses, and actually we circled back here later in the final hour when it was a lot quieter to see. There's always a new launch and plenty of press stories, and this time David Austin had their David Beckham roses. I saw so many people talking about the David Beckham rose. It was a very small rose, I think, with quite a delicate scent. Yeah, I was quite surprised. Thought it was going to have more bang for its buck, but very lovely indeed. And it was the first time in many years that gnomes were allowed in the venue. So here's a gnome. The Great Pavilion has a lot more colour than the show gardens, which is probably why I like it so much for examples. And so for me, it was honestly one of my favourite places for inspiration. And it is extraordinary to see the flowers at their peak. You get introduced to flowers that you've never seen before. If I were you, I would make sure you leave a good 90 minutes to walk around here. They're almost like little gardens within gardens. It's just absolutely beautiful. And now it's time for the life of a show garden. Finishing with these show gardens, and sometimes it feels like I need a bit more gardening knowledge to really appreciate them. So I just have to go off what I like rather than the specific plants or gardening techniques. Let's start with a small downside. The biggest show garden for 2026 was in conjunction with King Charles and David Beckham and had a queue around it the whole time I was there. I think they had structured it so you had to walk through it, whereas normally people just sort of sort themselves out along the edge. But with what I was guessing with a half-an-hour queue, we decided that we just couldn't spend the time queuing. So we didn't see that one, but all the rest are busy, but you just wait a minute or so and then you can get to the front. Despite my dream of floating through the gardens, you can't go into the gardens, but you might see the gardeners or people filming or sponsors inside. It also means you can't fully appreciate all the ins and outs of them, so it is just always good to watch the BBC coverage afterwards to pick up those little details. And they do hand out printed information, including the plants, and they will answer any questions for you as well. There are around 10 large show gardens and 5 smaller ones, so leave at least an hour to see these. Shopping. I think this could be very dangerous if you're in the market for anything garden related. I quite enjoyed the scale and the beauty of the items on display. Stunning water features. I mean, I would like this in my garden, yes please. Luxury wind chimes. Oh yes, I'd like these too. Plenty of high-end garden ornaments, which were inspired by animals, so So if you're an animal lover, you might like a beautiful swan or a flying horse or a penguin. So if that is what you're looking for, you've come to the right place. It is great for inspiration and to see the great quality materials and get great ideas. There are a number of shops on the Great Avenue with fashion, lifestyle and gardening items to buy, but with our time restrictions, we just didn't get a chance to explore these next time. Food and entertainment. With our half-day tickets, we only had one request for food, and that was to grab a huge ice cream from the Purbeck ice cream stand with their signature dinosaur on top. Delicious. We'd previously had one of these at RHS Wentworth Woodhouse last year. I'll link a card here if you want to see those gardens. There are places to eat and drink with champagne, pims and good old-fashioned cups of tea being top of the bill, and they had a stage where they were playing music with lots of people gathering to eat and drink here. Again, we didn't have time to hang around with so much to see, but it would be so much fun in the sun. Finally, when you're booking, they recommend lots of afternoon teas and fancy lunches, which I haven't tried. I'll have to book next year so I can report back. As promised, here's a few local places to eat and drink. While you're visiting Chelsea and Belgravia, make sure you stop by one of the fantastic cafes and restaurants because it is stacked to the rafters with them. One of my favourites is the Ivy Chelsea Garden, which is all the way up King's Road, but it's absolutely stunning and has the most amazing garden. Really recommend that. One of my other favourites is in Elizabeth Street. Clio is absolutely astonishingly gorgeous. Me and Fatina had a beautiful burger last year. We stopped halfway on this route. We had the most amazing time. It was so gorgeous in the sun. Another favourite is Peggy Portion for their cakes. Oh my God, they have the best cakes and decor. It's great. Tom Tom also does a really mean brunch if you go on Elizabeth Street. Absolutely perfect. Other foodie places include Vardo in Duke of York Square, a fantastic spot for people watching. Sloane Square has lots of cafes, including Cote and Colbert. The magnificent Cadogan Hotel on Sloane Street has the most incredible displays outside, and inside the interiors are exquisite. Just look at this incredible bar. There's a super chic bar at the Mandarin Oriental on Hyde Park. The Alfred Tennyson on Mottcombe Street is such an aesthetic, cosy British pub with lovely, lovely food. For my aesthetic girlies, you'll also love the Anya Hindmarsh Cafe with lots of fun, Instagrammable treats. Towards the river, you might like to check out Cheney Walk. I've only been here for a Sunday roast, but it's a beautiful blue building with plenty of decorations. On Mottcombe Street, Cafe Knack is a prime brunching spot. We absolutely love this fluffy pancake, and the people watching was pretty superb too. On Sloane Square, Cote is a surefire winner. It's much bigger than what you would expect inside and serves the usual Cote classics. And a touch away from the main action is Fulham Road, where you'll find Riccardo's, which is great if you are looking for gluten-free and incredible Italian restaurant. This is very kind of neighborhood, family run. I hope you've enjoyed my trip to Chelsea Flower Show. What's your experience with it? Are you a regular visitor, or are you putting it on the list? Or do you just like to watch the floral videos? Let me know in comments and I'll see you next time.